Is your dough sticky, dense? Is your bread gummy and has great big huge holes in it? You're in the right place. I'm Gloria McDonald, and welcome to Sourdough Made Easy, my live Q&A call. So let's get into some questions I have had this week. I get questions every week, and this is an image that was posted with this. I'm a beginner. I finally got my starter activated. I went to bed while my bread proofed. I woke up to this. I cannot bake them until this afternoon. What can I do to save them? So clearly from this picture, it looks like you're in the overproof zone or very, very close to it. So the first thing you want to do is cover them. I mean, you've got those covers. You don't want to press them down. So cover them with plastic wrap, saran wrap, and get them in the refrigerator as soon as possible. Then when you're ready to bake, you take them out of the refrigerator. If they can still hold some shape, some form, then what you want to do is gently shape them. Gently shape them into the boule or, that you're going to use, or whatever shape you're going to use. And then let them rest for 30 to 60 minutes on the counter, which is not what you would normally do, but let them rest for 30, 60 minutes and then bake them. It won't be the perfect loaf of bread. As I always say, you're not going to win first prize at the Iowa State Fair, but you'll still have a really good, tasty loaf of bread. Okay. Now, if after you put them in the refrigerator, you go off, do whatever you're going to do, you come home and you're ready to bake, and you can't, and they've just way overproofed and you can't get them to hold any form, that's okay. You still have more options. You can still turn this into focaccia. You can turn it into a loaf bread. So you can't get it shaped, but use a loaf pan. Put the dough in a loaf pan, grease the loaf pan, put it in a loaf pan, and actually over fermented dough shines for loaf breads, focaccia, or flatbread, right? So you could do a flatbread. So you have not ruined anything. All is not lost. You can still use this dough, even if it's over fermented. And if it comes out, like if it really falls and comes out, really quite jiggly, for sure, do a flatbread or put it in a loaf pan. And the good news is you're learning, right? And sourdough is a learning process. It's really all about starting to understand the timing in your home, in your environment, with your starter and your dough. And you'll get a rhythm going, and you'll understand that, oh my gosh, okay, proofing this overnight was too long. Okay. So the question is then, how can you control that? What's the temperature in your home? Sometimes you just can't ferment overnight. It's just too long. And at what point did you do your stretch and folds? And did you start the bulk fermentation? So for example, for me, I don't start the bulk fermentation until 9, 10, maybe even 11 o'clock at night. And then I can let it bulk ferment overnight. If I start my bulk fermentation at, 6 or 7 in the evening, it's going to be way overproofed by the next morning. Okay. But my home is very warm. Your home's going to be different. Your starter is going to be different. There are different things going on here. Okay. Next question was, mixing my first double batch today for a bake tomorrow. I have 2 Dutch ovens, but should I cook them one at a time or try cooking together? Wondering if sharing the heat affects the outcome. Not at all. Sharing the heat does not affect the outcome at all. I bake 2 loaves of bread in my oven all the time in 2 Dutch ovens. In fact, I have a wood pellet barbecue, and you can bake in it because you can set a temperature and it will hold the temperature. And I bake 3 loaves of sourdough in my barbecue all the time. So go for it. Cook them both at once. It won't affect anything at all. And in my oven, when I'm doing 2 loaves with my 2 Dutch ovens, the pots are touching each other, and it's just fine. It will work beautifully. You'll be happy you did it that way. Okay, really interesting picture here. So the question is, why does my dough always come out dense? The starter has bubbles throughout. And you can see this image here. This is quite dense. Clearly it's got infusions. It looks like it's cheese and maybe onion, not sure. But and it's a little bit tricky because we can't see the crust very well. I mean, it looks like it's brown, but this clearly looks like it is under fermented, underproofed, under fermented. So there are a couple things. Just because your starter has bubbles doesn't mean it's ready, right? You want your starter to definitely have doubled in size, maybe yours is going to even go more than that, and you want to get it either just before peak to just after peak, right? So your starter may have domed, the dome may have come out of it a bit. Either one of those scenarios is fine. Some people say you definitely want it just past peak. Other people say you want it just before peak. I mean, most of us don't have lives where we can sit there and stare at our starter and make sure we're getting it at just a certain time. But you definitely want it to have doubled in size. You want it to have lots of air bubbles throughout. But it's not just about having air bubbles in it. So the other thing is, it looks like it didn't bulk ferment long enough. So two main variables here. One is your starter strength, and the other is bulk fermentation. But this really looks quite dense. And if this is what all of this happened to be a man, if this is what all of his loaves look like, then it's definitely, under fermented. So you just need to ferment longer. Now, in my experience, for most people, and again, there are lots of different variables. There's your starter strength, which has a significant impact, and there's the temperature in your home. But for most people, bulk fermentation is, generally speaking, going to take, it's not unusual for it to take, minimum of 8 up to 12 hours, 8 to 12 hours, again, depending upon the temperature in your home and things. But it definitely looks like it is under fermented. So, and that is a super common problem. So the fix to that is just let it bulk ferment longer. Okay. And guys, here's the big thing. Watch your dough, not the clock. Okay. Darlene is here and says, I'm a new baker. The first few sandwich bread, I used a stand mixer. Everything went as instructed, but the last 2 doughs were sticky and didn't come from the sides. What have I done? Again, sticky dough tends to mean that you didn't let it bulk ferment long enough. Or two big things, Darlene. One is your starter strength. Did you get your starter, did it double or even more? Did you get it at peak? Did you get it too soon, or did you get it way past peak? So if your starter has doubled and then it's fallen significantly, it's losing its strength again. And did you let your dough actually bulk ferment long enough? Those are the two big things, okay? Another thing could be, now you're using a stand mixer. Another thing could be, did you do enough stretch and folds, right? If you're not using a stand mixer, did you do enough stretch and folds? That could be another potential thing in this. Is your kitchen just too cold, right? Because the temperature in your kitchen makes a big difference. And are you cutting it too soon? But this particular picture has nothing to do with cutting it too soon. If you cut it too soon, what normally happens is you'll see it'll be dense at the bottom of the loaf, but that's not this scenario. Okay, next question. So Darlene, hopefully that helped you. If you have more questions, just put it in the comments there. Okay, the next thing is, and I so appreciate this question. This person said, I am so confused. This question came to me on TikTok. I am so confused. I've heard to discard half the starter every day and then add the flour and water. Now I'm hearing just keep 20 grams of starter. That's not much starter. And to be clear, I'm talking about having a new starter that's only 3+ weeks old. I have not used it to make bread yet. I took out 20 grams and it's like only 2 tablespoons. This is a great question, guys. And if you have not listened to the podcast I did this week, go to sourdoughsorcery.com and then click on podcast And there's a podcast there all about starter ratios. You're right. 20 grams of starter is not much starter, but the amount of starter you have really doesn't matter. Here's the thing. You get to decide. People are out there saying, well, I feed a 1-1-1 starter ratio. I feed 1-3-3. I feed 1-5-5, as if it's some kind of goofy badge of honor or something, or if there's one right or wrong way to do it. There is not one right or wrong way to do it. You are controlling, but most people don't understand that they're controlling it, by the amount you're feeding, by the ratios you're feeding your starter. You're controlling the speed at which your starter activates. That's it, period. One's not right, one's not wrong. It's about speed. That's it. So if you're feeding, so I generally feed a 1-1-1 feeding because of my schedule. But there are times when I do a 1-3-3 or to a 1-4-4. So generally speaking, what I'm doing, because it works with my schedule, it's not right. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's just what I do because it works beautifully for my schedule. I feed my starter around 4 to 5 in the afternoon, and I feed it a 1-1-1 feeding. So that means I, for example, am starting off with, let's say, 60 grams of starter. I add 60 grams of flour and 60 grams of water. Most recipes are going to call for about 100 grams of starter. Look at your recipe, see how much it's calling for. You want to make sure you've got enough starter, and then you always want to have some left over because you need to keep starter, right? So you want to make sure if your recipe is calling for 100 grams of starter, that you're going to have more than that by the time you feed your starter. So generally speaking, I'm doing 1-1-1, and I'm going to do 60 grams of starter, 60 grams of flour, and 60 grams of water, okay? Then with the 1-1-1 feeding in my kitchen, my starter is going to be activated in 2.5 to 3 hours. And in the summertime, I'm in Arizona. It's March 20th. We're on our third day that's already over 100 degrees. Now, this is unusual. It's really warm early, but when it's 115 degrees outside, our house is only at 78 degrees and we're pumping the air conditioning like crazy, but my starter is going really quickly in the summertime. And with a 1-1-1 feeding, it will be activated in an hour and a half. Now, there are times. So then I activate my starter. I feed it sometime between 4 and 5. It's active sometime between, let's say, 6 and 7. I'm mixing my dough, and then I'm doing, approximately 2 hours of stretch and folds, stretching it out, with 30 minutes in between. And that means I'm ready to bulk ferment by 10 o'clock or so at night, which is perfect timing for me for my kitchen. So with the 1-1-1 feeding, I can start my whole process late in the afternoon, which is what I like to do. Then first thing in the morning, I shape my dough, and then I let it slow cold ferment in the refrigerator because I always like to let my dough slow cold ferment for extra flavor and extra health benefits and everything else. Okay. However, there are times when I want to have my starter ready for first thing in the morning. If I feed it at night with a 1-1-1 feeding, it's going to be ready. Like, let's say I fed it at 10 o'clock at night with a 1-1-1 feeding in my kitchen. It's going to be ready by 12:30 in the morning, which means at 8 o'clock in the morning, when I'm ready to mix my dough, my starter is going to be way, way, way past peak. So if I want to have my starter be ready for first thing in the morning, I'm going to feed it somewhere between a 1-3-3 and a 1-4-4, which would mean, and I'm just using these numbers, not that this is what I use, but to make the math easy, which would mean I'd start off with, let's say, 10 grams of starter. I never use just 10 grams of starter, but a 1-3-3 feeding is 10 grams of starter, 30 grams of water, 30 grams of flour. So it could be 20 grams of starter, 60 grams of flour, 60 grams of water. That would be a 1-3-3 feeding. And for me, generally speaking, with a 1-3-3 feeding, it's ready by first thing in the morning. Now, for people that are doing 1-5-5 feedings, their kitchen might be really cold, but it's going to take a very long time. It's going to take longer. So the more food you're giving your starter, on proportions, ratios, the longer it's going to take for your starter to activate, because your starter has to eat through all that food to double in size and activate. So it's not about how much starter you keep. You know, people are all, well, I only keep 10 grams of starter. Well, good, you know, and all that means is you're going to have to feed it a whole lot more because you need the volume. If you keep 10 grams of starter and you need 100 grams of starter for the recipe, plus you need a little extra because you need to have starter left over so you keep your starter going, you're going to have to feed a very high ratio so that you've got enough starter for your recipe. So that means that it's going to take a long time for your starter to activate. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's just timing. So the really cool thing about this is when you understand this, you get to control the timing of your starter and the timing of your bakes when you understand. Okay? So there's nothing right or wrong about 20 grams of starter. Personally, I keep way more than that. I keep about probably 80 grams of starter. I don't measure it because I can do it well enough by feel now. I know what I'm doing. Okay? All right. Next question. Does anyone use a warmer for their starter? My kitchen is always so cold. Great question. And here's the deal. So let me just change this a bit. I don't really use this, but I bought it. I've got this on my store. This is a starter heating pad. It works so well. I don't need to use it on a regular basis again because my kitchen's so warm, but I did purchase it. And because I thought, if I'm going to carry it on my store, I want to test it out. I want to see what happens. And I tested it out starting a brand new starter from scratch for a test purpose. And oh my gosh, this thing is amazing. Amazing. It's so easy to use. If you're struggling with your starter at all, I can't, especially if you're getting a starter going from scratch and you're struggling with it, or if your kitchen is just cold, this warming mat is amazing. So the other thing I can do with this warming mat is I can, again, affect my schedule for baking. So if I want to bake even faster, I can use this warming mat, get my starter activated even faster. Now, the ideal internal temperature for your starter is 74 to 78 degrees. You don't really want to go over 78 degrees because the really healthy bacteria is going to start to weaken, right? So you want to keep it strong. Too hot is not good. Too cold is just going to slow everything way down. But this starter warming pad is so great, and it's not very expensive. I can't recommend it strongly enough for everyone because it means you can really control your baking schedule with this thing, okay? So again, you can get it, go to sourdoughsorcery.com and then go to store, and it's right there on my store. You might have to scroll down just a little bit, but worth its weight in gold for everyone. Whether maybe your starter is great and you know exactly what you're doing, as I do, but I can use this to help control my schedule. If I'm running a little behind and I really want the bread for tonight or whenever, I can use this and speed up my starter. It's really worth it. You'll be so glad you invested in that starter warming mat. Okay, so next question was oh, sorry, I thought there was another question there. But so guys, if you're struggling to get your bread to turn out, which I know so many people are, I see it online all the time with these kinds of questions I get. I can't recommend strongly enough that you check out my Sourdough Made Easy class. It's an online class. You can do it when you want, whenever you want. You can just go through the modules step by step. And in there, I take you from step by step from feeding your starter right through to mixing your dough, doing stretch and folds, bulk fermenting, slow cold fermenting, and having a beautiful loaf of bread. Okay? So to get that information, just go to sourdoughsorcery.com and then click on the classes link. I've got my Sourdough Made Easy class, and I also have my 7-day starter method. So if you're struggling to get a starter going from scratch, my 7-day starter method, I have a 30-day money-back guarantee on it because I guarantee you, if you follow the directions I give you, you will have an active, wonderful starter in 7 to 10 days. Okay? Thanks so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care.